Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have Ron Reagan back with us today. We'll chat with Ron in just a second, but first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So for 40 years, Ron Reagan has been a television and radio correspondent, host and political commentator with ABC, MSNBC, and Air America, among others. And he is the author of the New York Times bestseller, My Father at 100. Ron, welcome back into the back room.
Well, thank you for having me.
This has been a dizzying week in politics. And I will start with what is dominating the news cycle right now, which is this Epstein dump of emails and a resurgence, if you will, of the Epstein scandal as the story. What do you make of all this that's happening right now?
You know, I think the fixation on whether or not Donald Trump had sex with teenage girls is, while worthwhile, because you'd want to know if that was happening, I think it might miss a kind of larger point in all of this. I was beginning to read some of the emails that are, being released now. And what struck me, listen, Donald Trump was Jeffrey Epstein's best friend for a dozen years. Do any of us think that he didn't know what Jeffrey Epstein was up to? No,
right.
Of course he did. Whether he participated or not. But it was striking to me that even after Epstein had been convicted of child sex trafficking, let's emphasize child there, yes, teenage, but technically child sex trafficking, the number of people, prominent people, connected people, wired-in people, who still wanted to exchange email. I'm thinking Larry Summers, for instance. What is going on with these people? What was it about Jeffrey Epstein? And it wasn't just his money. They all know richer people, Jeffrey Epstein. What was it about him that had all these people flocking to his plane, his island, his house, his, whatever.
What could it have been?
What could it have? Well, yeah, okay, that. But for instance, the sense is that for Bill Clinton had learned his lesson by then and was not partaking. There's no email that suggests that he was. Why does Bill Clinton want to hang around with Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted child sex trafficker? Mm-hmm. Now, you'll remember the first time he was busted, and Acosta was down there in Florida as the attorney general, that he gave him the sweetheart deal. And he has said, Acosta, before going to work for Trump and his administration, that he was told that Epstein was hooked up with the intelligence services. Now, and so leave him alone. Don't, just give him an easy ride here. Well, who told Acosta that? And how? Follow those breadcrumbs. I was listening to a journalist just yesterday talking about this, and she said, the police down there in Palm Beach did a great job. They had him dead to rights. Mm-hmm. He said they were thwarted in every instance, though. Mm-hmm. The attorney general. Then when it went to the federal level, there, the FBI, everybody was pushing back against this prosecution. Well, that had to start with somebody. The FBI didn't just think, well, let's let the child sex trafficker, skate here. Somebody was telling them what to do. Who was it that was telling them, leave this guy alone? Mm-hmm. He's hooked up with the CIA or whatever it might be. The fact that he was offering his services to the Russians.
Yes, that's crazy.
Saying, look, Sergei Lavrov might want to have a conversation with me. I can tell him all about this Trump guy who's going to end up in the White House, and Putin will be very interested in what I have to say. What is that about?
And then you have the author, Michael Wolff. We see in these emails, he's strategizing with Epstein about how to approach Donald Trump's debate night. And it is astounding the prominent people who were in this man's orbit.
Yes. And why? Bill Gates going to, it may have cost Bill Gates his marriage.
But don't we really know why? I mean, I hate coming back to that. Or
he wanted to have sex with teenagers. I mean, they can be Alan Dershowitz and leave their underwear on, but they a happy ending.
I mean, look, you mentioned Bill Clinton, and there are others throughout history, very brilliant, successful, accomplished politicians who've made the dumbest judgments and mistakes when it has come to sex. Why would we not think in this particular case that there's just not a plethora of prominent, successful, globally famous people who have done some really bad shit?
Oh, well, I'm sure of that, but I mean, it's a disturbing thought, but you may be right. It may be as simple as that. I go to Jeffrey's and get a hand job, woohoo!
Right. Well, think about what Howard Lutnick had said about a month ago, because he lived right next door to Epstein.
Right.
And he said, I went there and there's massage tables everywhere and there's video cameras everywhere. And he said, this is the greatest blackmailer in history. He thinks there's tapes out there and that Epstein has used them to his benefit. What does he have on that?
There's some suggestion, for instance, that Ehud Barak was the man, the well-known prime minister, Virginia Giuffre referenced, before she tragically ended her life, who violently raped her on Epstein's Island. Now, I mean, the Mossad knows that Ehud Barak is doing that then. I
didn't know that. Has that been public that it was him? I wasn't sure.
No. The implication is that it was. She's a famous prime minister. Well, it's Tony Blair and him at that point. And he did indeed. He's on the flight logs out to that island, I guess. So it's like maybe it was Ehud Barak. I don't know that, of course. But whether it was him or somebody else, the idea that, world leaders who are, again, a little like Bill Clinton in the Oval Office with Monica Lewinsky. Did you think nobody knew where you were and who you were with? You're the president of the United States. You're in the Oval Office. Everybody knows exactly who you're with and where you are at every moment. The Secret Service is keeping track. The same would apply to Ehud Barak and Israeli intelligence services. They would have known that he was on Epstein's Island and probably would have known what he was up to. And the idea that prominent people like this, many of them, are involved in this kind of scummy, troubling, to say the least, behavior is it's astonishing and troubling.
It is starting to feel like this scandal is like a giant boulder rolling down a hill, and that those who want to escape it can't. Yeah, no, I think you're right. And Trump may not be the biggest perpetrator here in all of this. I mean, it's inconceivable that he didn't know what was going on. You got the birthday card and all that kind of stuff. But maybe he didn't really participate. It's possible. But boy, a lot of people did. So we have 10 years of Donald Trump and other prominent Republicans saying, put us back in power, and we're going to take down this awful deep state cabal of rich, powerful, elite, pedophile Democrats. We're going to bring it down because they've been keeping these files from you, and we're going to put them out there. Then he gets control of everything. Says he's innocent, but yet I'm not going to release the files. Now, it would be so easy to release them because you're going to make MAGA thrilled, right? You're not only fulfilling a huge, perhaps the biggest promise to them as far as what they care about, but you can put Democrats in prison. He loves to do that. He's indicting people all over the place. Yeah. So the question then is just why? Why is he fighting like an animal to keep these files secret? Why does he take Lauren Boebert into the Situation Room this week to pressure her with Bondi and Kash Patel, the FBI, the Department of Justice, to get her to change her vote? Like, why wouldn't he want to bring these people to justice if he's not personally involved? I just can't get around that question.
Yeah, and I think he is, to some extent, to whatever extent. Of course, he is personally involved. Again, I don't know that he sex age people, so I can't say that. But of course, he was involved with Epstein. Of course, his name is all over the place.
1,000 times they're referenced in this treasure trove. Yeah,
Oh,
his name comes up 1,000 times. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm old school, right? I think maybe we're of the same generation. Like, if there's smoke, there's fire, and like there are embers burning. Like, whether or not this turns into a 5-alarmer, I don't know, but I think we're beyond the smoke part.
Yeah, and you raise a good question: is why would he be so enthusiastic about releasing these documents, at least initially during the campaign? Well, yeah, of course, MAGA wanted it, fine. But he had to know that he was all over this thing.
But do you think, like,
know?
but I have the theory that he's a sociopath, which explains a lot of what he does and says. Just as he said, vote for me, and the price of everything is gonna come down, and 11 months later he's insisting that they have when they haven't. To me, it's the same kind of thing. Like, I don't know how much thought he put into it. Like, if I'm in there, why would I want to be telling these people that I'm going to release these files? I just feel like he did it to get elected, and then he thought he's all powerful, and he'll never release it.
I'll make it go away when I get into office. Yeah. That's quite possible. I mean, you mentioned sociopath. I've been calling him since 2015. I've been referring to him as a sociopathic grifter.
It's so obvious.
Well, it is. So and I didn't think that was really name calling. As people say, well, you can't say. I said, I'm not name calling. I'm just being observational here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obvious that that's what's going on. I'll take it a little farther now. Having listened, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I've listened to more than a few of them talk about him, and thought about it myself, of course. And he's more than just a sociopath. He's a malignant narcissist who is sociopathic, and he's a psychopath. I mean, it goes beyond. He's a psychopath. I first thought, okay, I'm comfortable now using that word, when he pulled the security from his, who was it? His Secretary of State and John Bolton, and the assistant Pompeo and John Bolton. Not only pulled their security detail, which they had because they had acted on his behalf in regard to Iran, and Iran declared a fatwa. So they've got a nation state that's trying to kill them. They've got extra security. He pulls that security and then announces that he's done it. In a sense, inviting violence against these people. That is crazy. Then there was the moment in the Oval Office the other day, just to skip ahead, where the guy collapses in the office and he just turns and kind of stares into space. Who does that? What sort of person reacts that way to that sort of thing? Well, I'll tell you, a psychopath does.
Yeah.
And so we've got a psychopathic president here. If you're wondering what he's going to do next, ask yourself what a psychopath would do, because that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and as he becomes more and more of a cornered rat, perhaps, we're going to see that in ugly fashion. Where do you think this goes? Like, the Senate, the buzz is now that the Senate may push this thing through, this measure to release the Epstein files. Is there a scenario where this can land on Trump's desk after the public wants it, MAGA wants it, the House voted for it, the Senate voted for it, and he says, nope, I veto it? If they don't get a veto-proof vote in the Senate?
If he thinks that he's going to suffer for this, of course. We talk a lot about, does he know it? Is he lying, or is he just ignorant? Or, does he know that he's lying? Wrong question. Truth and falsity don't matter to him. They never matter the picture. He's simply trying to win every moment.
Right.
And so in every moment, he's going to say whatever he thinks.
So true.
Tories there. Whether it's true or false really is irrelevant. He's not even thinking about that. It's just, what do I need to say to get over here? So that's, would he veto this if it looked like, his presidency was going to spiral, down with it? Yeah, sure he would.
But if he vetoes it, his presidency spirals down, because there's no other explanation for vetoing it other than I can't. See, I've said for a while now, he can't release these files. He can't because of what I personally believe are in them.
Yeah. No,
He's
I
in a
think you're
real
right.
spot.
You don't know exactly what's in there, but he's got a pretty good idea, and he clearly doesn't want us to know.
Yeah.
So,
But it's that boulder rolling down the hill. I think it's starting to feel like it just might smother him soon.
yeah, I think so. We, talking just before we started about, how quickly this could fall apart for him. And I think you're maybe starting to see the beginning of this. Now, I don't want to be overly optimistic because times if we
That's bitten us in the ass before.
Yeah. Who else? What other presidential candidate could boast about, grabbing them by the pussy and survive that? I mean, anybody else that would have been the end, but no, not for him. So I don't know. But because there's no there, this is not this isn't an evil genius who's got this plan. Russell Vought might have a plan. Stephen Miller might even have a plan. Trump he just bounces from moment to moment. What works for him in that moment. So I think what happens is that a critical mass of the public eventually sees through this. And at that point, he's been cruising along at, 40% or 38% or whatever. And it just,
well, he's been trying so hard to get Republicans to stay loyal to him on this issue. And it seems like there's going to be a massive defection in the House. And as I mentioned, the Senate potentially too. Are we at some kind of inflection point, you think? Is this the moment where their line has been drawn, like the rape of children? Like, unfortunately, it may take us to that point, but like, are we at, do you think, some kind of inflection point?
We may be again, we would have thought so before, and it turned out not to be the case. I mean, betting on the Republicans to show some spine is foolish. That's a foolish bet to place. But it may be, it's not like these people like him. It's not like John Thune.
No, they hate him.
They hate him. They must know, some of them at least must know that he's destroying the party, that their party never recover from this. So some of them probably would like him gone.
That's what I think.
Can just J.D. Vance, maybe just stick him in there or whatever. Mike Johnson. And so, it may be that this is an easy way to accomplish that, or they think an easy way to accomplish that. Yeah, let's release these documents. That'll kill them.
And let's vote on this next week instead of December. Like, that was a curious move on Johnson's part. Like, all of a sudden, he's now the opposite of Mr. Delay, which is bizarre.
Yeah. I'm always suspicious of somebody like Mike Johnson. There may be some fix in here. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see, though.
Yeah.
It's going to.
It is interesting. It is interesting because he's been able to control the narrative for all these years and dominate the news cycle with whatever he wants. And he just looks flailing right now. He is out of control, which is not something we've ever seen with Donald Trump before.
It's true, and I think, and many people have been talking about this too, that he's nearly 80 years old. He is pathologic. He's not a well person and never has been, but now he's a not well person who's pushing 80 and maybe starting to suffer from dementia as well. And this could turn out very badly.
Yeah, well, it could break MAGA and it could break him as a result.
Yeah.
And if it breaks MAGA, it breaks the congressional Republicans, because that's all they ever cared about is their fear of what the base might do to them if they turn on Trump. And so it just seems like we're at some interesting point in time.
And without Trump, what is the new Republican Party? J.D. Vance is there, he's vice president, but I don't see people flocking to J.D. Vance.
No,
he has no charisma.
No, MAGA doesn't like him. He's part of that Ivy League elite that they hate.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully there are people in the wings like what's his name, Jeff, the former lieutenant governor down in Georgia. What's his last name? It's escaping me. But there are people who have been pushed out of the party over the last several years that have been in the wings that could come back as centrists and sane people But you don't know. Is Marjorie
when,
Taylor
when,
Greene
when
positioning
Liz
herself to
Cheney,
be the future?
when Liz Cheney starts looking sane, you know that you've gone a
Yeah,
long.
exactly. Liz Cheney. No, not
I
Jeff
mean,
Flake.
perhaps
Duncan. Jeff Duncan.
F.
But
Duncan. Okay.
Jeff Flake is another
Yeah.
another one like that.
And,
What do you make of the recent elections?
well, I think, you know, the public is fickle. The public gets tired of people very quickly. And I think what we saw in New York and Virginia and New Jersey was people saying, this thing isn't working. Let's go the other way now. And certainly, New York is a very liberal place, but Mamdani performed pretty impressively there. I think, it's a generational thing. Old guys like us are, we're heading for the door. And, 20 somethings, 30 somethings, even 40 somethings, they're tired of listening to these 80-year-olds, no offense, but 80-year-olds like, Chuck Grassley or whoever, who just barely seem like they're coherent anymore and seem to just, be dinosaurs from another era. I don't know what game they think they're playing, but it's not. It's something different.
Well, to that end, what do you think of the Democrats' leadership? Obviously, there's a lot of controversy around Chuck Schumer and calls for him to step aside as leader. It just seems like the party is fighting as if they're fighting against Newt Gingrich in the 80s.
And we're not even that, fighting against Tip O'Neill, maybe. It's as if this is some whole other game, and they need to get off that. I mean, listen, it's I've always had that. My complaint with the Democratic Party is they don't know how to fight.
Right.
The other side wants to. I remember going to a meeting once down in the Sea Islands off of Georgia. Somebody invited me to go. I'd go to these strategy meetings for parties or anything, but somebody invited me to go, and I thought, well, this would be interesting. I wonder what they talk about. So I did. And they started out the meeting with all these kind of connected people who were sort of political operatives and stuff, talking about they started with what concessions do we need to make to the Republican Party? And I listened as they went around the room and everybody talked about what concessions they were going to make right off the bat to the Republican Party. And finally it got to me and I said, apologize, I'm new here, and so I don't, know about all of this. But I said, I promise you this: on the other side, they're having they're not having that conversation. They're not saying how do we concede things to the Democrats. They want to kill you.
Yes,
they destroy you. So you need to, nut up here.
Well, Democrats don't ever seem to get that. I mean, we just had this shutdown deal. I was listening to Angus King, and he's like, we gave in because, we were fighting Trump and we were losing that battle. And I was like, did you see the election results? Did you see the polls? Did you see the fact that Americans are blaming Republicans for the shutdown? Like, he saw all of that and still concluded that they were losing the battle against Trump. Astounding.
Yeah. I think mainstream media, even I read the New York Times every day, but even they will sane-wash Trump and sort of, push back against any, too aggressive Democratic move or anything like that, as if there's this sort of magic middle that everybody has to sort of, evolve towards. We just need to be more centrist. What's all this about universal health care or taxing the rich? Come on, that's just radical talk. Well, no, it's not. Every other country on earth does this. Rich people pay a lot of taxes and they have universal health care, just as for instances there. But we won't fight for it. It's crazy, and I don't know what the psychology is there, though. The New York Times is always trying to. The other day, they said there was a headline something about that the U.S. has withheld SNAP funds. The U.S. didn't withhold anything. The Trump administration did. Right. There was money there they could have allocated for that, and they didn't. What do you mean the U.S.? Why don't you want to put the blame where it belongs?
Well, I think what's happened with Democrats, the establishment Democrats, is that they've just always let Republicans control the narrative. And that's what they then react to. That's their strategy. How do we respond to the things Republicans do and say? And you mentioned the victors last week. When you look at Mikey Sherrill and Abigail Spanberger and Zoran Mamdani, they're writing their own rules. They're writing their own narrative. They're not responding to Republican talking points and being defensive. They went on the offense. And if Democrats can do more of that, then I think we're truly running with the wind in our backs.
There aren't a lot of right targets out there, too.
You would think, right? So I want to talk to you about this Ontario ad, which was released by the Canadian province of Ontario. They used a clip of your dad's 1987 speech in which he was very critical of tariffs, or at least I'll just, for the benefit of anyone's doubt, say it appeared like he was critical of tariffs. It pissed Donald Trump off so much that he raised the Canadian tariffs by 10%, which to this day he still claims that your dad loved tariffs. So did the Canadian ad accurately represent your father's views on tariffs?
Yes, of course it did. You heard his own words there. Yes, they edited it. Of course, they edited it and moved some phrases around, but it didn't change the meaning. My father was a big free trader. You can think whatever you want about that, but he was a big free trader. He did not like tariffs. He wanted open markets and immigration. While we're at it, he was very pro-immigration too. So, this is, with Trump again being, insane, reacted the way he did. Sometimes I do think about, how appalled my parents, my father and my mother, now that we're talking about tearing down the East Wing.
I'm going to get to that in a minute, too.
Just offended they would be by all of this. I mean, you don't have to agree. I didn't agree with them politically on lots of stuff, and really probably neither, but, again, decent human being, adult, grown up, not insane. And I think he would just be, he'd see right through Trump, first of all, both of them. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know, how else to put it, but, my father would want to pinch Trump's empty head off and shit down his traitorous neck. I mean, this is, let's be honest, the man's a traitor.
Yeah.
He tried to overthrow the government last year in 2021, so there's that. And we decided to give another chance in our wisdom.
Well, we probably did.
But
I know how you mean we. But you and I, we didn't give him another chance. It is astounding that half of this country gave him another chance.
Yes. What are they thinking? There are going to be books written eventually about the psychology of this moment and how so many people were duped. And then you get to the people who know better and yet still went along with this awful program of his. What is going on in Marco Rubio's head?
I know. I was thinking that yesterday when he was defending, I forget what it was he was defending. It doesn't matter anymore. He's such a sycophant.
People in the Caribbean on the high seas.
Yeah. And I was like, I literally said to myself, out loud, what are you doing, Marco? The fuck is wrong with you? Because it's so obvious. We know who he is. We know who Marco Rubio is. We know how he feels, what he's done. He was a senator for years. We know his feelings on Trump. Like, what happened to Marco Rubio?
Yeah.
And the rest of them.
No self-respect, no dignity. My God. The guy who's like insulting your family and, all kinds of stuff. And
so what do you think it is?
I don't know. I'm not enough of a psychologist to be able to say, what is Marco Rubio getting out of this? He gets to be Secretary of State? Yeah, but he gets to be Secretary of State under Trump. Right. That's going to be like, well, I was the Secretary of State under Hitler.
Yeah, I was just following orders. Never seems to be a good defense. I mean, I don't get it. I mean, there's congressional Republicans, and then there's the people at home. Congressional Republicans, you could say, all right, it's a power grab, access. They love being in the Oval Office. It makes them feel big and important, or they're afraid of the base. But what is it about the base? What made half of this country, knowing what they knew about this guy, it was a convicted felon and an adjudicated sexual abuser, put him, that guy, back in the White House?
I think it's less that they love him than they hate us. There are a lot of people out there, Trump pretends to be one of them, who really don't like us. They have a lot of bad things to say about you and me, for instance. And that hatred, which is partly just a cultural thing, these coastal elites, they look down on us. They're fancy pants, educations, and all of that sort of stuff. And the other is just economic. And
or before economic, it's also the hatred of the scary black and brown people.
Well,
domestic and the ones coming into this country.
Let's fold the racism and the sexism. I don't think the Kamala Harris running for president, she loses by 1.5% in the popular vote. How much do you think being a black woman took off that?
Right. Well, I said that after the election. It's like, why are we trying to figure out why she lost? The black lady lost, right? It is pretty obvious.
Yeah. So there is the racism, but I mean, these are people. I took a drive, and maybe I told you the last time I was here, and stop me if I have. But I took a drive across the country, like a summer ago, and right along the kind of northern tier through the Dakotas and Wyoming and Montana and Idaho, so some pretty conservative kind of areas, and they're quite depressed. Once you get out of the big cities, you're in a different America. People there look hard pressed. They're nice folks and all, but they just look beleaguered, and like they haven't got the fair shake, really, and they haven't. I mean, Elon Musk is running away with $1 trillion payday, and a lot of people can't afford healthcare or food.
Well, Trump is holding Great Gatsby-themed parties at Mar-a-Lago. He's building a $300 million ballroom, and we still want to get to the East Wing in a second. And he's saying, I don't want to hear about the affordability. That's a direct quote. It's insane, right?
Hear about it. Yeah, I don't want to hear about all these people starving. Let them eat cake.
Yeah. I mean, up until very recently, I would say, like, it doesn't matter what he says. He said it 10 years ago. If I shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, I won't lose support. But I think they're now starting to go, hey, wait a second. That guy just shot somebody. There's something changing.
Yeah, didn't he say that the grocery prices were going to come down right away?
And he's saying everything is down. And the people at home are like,
you know better.
Yeah, well, he is so pathological that he is literally saying to his base, who are you going to believe, me or your lying grocery bill?
That's right.
And they're saying, I believe my grocery bill. We saw that on the 4th in the elections. They're not buying his bullshit,
No, I don't think most of them will anymore. And this is we get to that collapse thing again. I think at the point the wheels just come right off the bus. Yeah. They wanted to talk about the East Wing.
Yeah. So your dad served as president for 8 years, during which time he and your mother, Nancy, they did some renovations, the private quarters, other areas of the White House. Yeah. What is but those were just classic renovations, okay? What is your emotional and symbolic reaction to Trump's demolition of the East Wing?
It really just disgust. It's embarrassing. It's not just the destruction of the East Wing, which is like, oh my, he promised he wouldn't, and then he did. Yeah, big surprise. But all the kind of gold leaf tchotchkes all over the place, and the presidential walk of fame with the swirly letters and in gold, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's
the amount of gold in the Oval Office it looks like a Vegas whorehouse. I mean, it is with cheap gold-plated crap. It's astounding that someone sees that and sees class when the rest of us just go classless.
Yes, yeah, but I mean, for him, it's like somebody said about a poor person's idea of a rich person.
Exactly.
It's like, wouldn't they have gold everywhere?
Saddam Hussein had a lot of gold.
No, I'll tell you, if I were running for president, and I'm certainly not, but if I were Gavin Newsom or somebody else running for president, I would announce right now that however far along they get with that massive ballroom, when I get into the Oval Office, it's coming down.
Oh. I said 2 weeks ago that I really feel like I am not going to support any one of the primary candidates unless they make that commitment that you elect
Yeah.
me, that sucker's coming down.
Rebuild the East Wing. It's going to look
Exactly.
just like it on the outside. We'll fix it up on the inside, make the press room bigger, and do some stuff that's practical. But it's going to look the same. The White House is going to look the way you remember it, and that big ugly thing is going to be gone. And we can do the Arc of Triumph too. That can be gone. And anything that was named after Trump, that name is coming off.
Do you have any strong personal memories of the East Wing or memories of your mother and father involved in that part of the White House?
I've been in the East Wing. I've met people coming in the visitors' entrance at the East Wing there before. It doesn't, admittedly doesn't stick in your mind quite the way the Oval Office does. And the thing that people don't realize too, I think, and this was a deliberate choice by George Washington, I guess, among others, when they were planning ahead for a building that would house the president. They didn't want it big and grand. They didn't want Versailles. They wanted something that was, impressive, but still relatively modest. And the Oval Office it's not large. Striking because it's an oval and you kind of come in on the side and go, wow, it's kind of a oval room, isn't it? But it's not very big. And it was very, I don't want to say it's ascetic, but it's, it was kind of plain in a way. They had the Swedish ivy up on the mantelpiece that had been there for a long time. There was a real sense of tradition there that this room has seen so many things, and it's a sacred place in a way. And this guy comes in, as you said, and treats it like some sort of bordello bathroom, and it's shocking, and it kind of just hits you in the solar plexus a little. It's like, oh my God, it's like somebody painted a mustache on the Mona Lisa or something. You feel a visceral offense.
Don't give him any ideas.
Yeah, really. Really. I can only imagine what he's done to the living quarters up there. But, gilding them with all kinds of crap and also probably trashing them. Because the reporting, I'm sure you've heard as well, is that when he stays someplace, including Buckingham Palace, he trashes the place.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he leaves places just filthy.
Shocking.
Big surprise. So I can only imagine what the living quarters is like. My mother, when she moved in, she got the fancy Nancy stuff, and she had people donate some china, and she got into the warehouses where they had all this antique furniture that had been from previous presidents way back, and she thought, well, this should be shown. People should be able to see this. Let's bring some of these pieces out of storage and put them in the White House where they were originally, and that was her kind of take on redoing things. She wasn't knocking down walls and plastering all this crap up all over the place.
No, I think it's such an important point you made before, because most people, when they go and visit or do a tour, are astonished by how remarkably small it is. When you would think this is the home of the United States president. But in his crippling insecurities, it's too small for him. Like, he wants it to be a gilded palace. A guy with no friends needs a 90,000 square foot ballroom. Like, a lot of people view his destruction of the East Wing as more than some kind of architectural twist. It's like a symbolic act of power and disruption of the people's house, and an assault on democratic norms. Like, he has to make it, like, he's such a branding maniac that he has to brand the White House so that when someone goes, they'll never, ever think of Washington again. They'll never think of any other president or administration. They'll think Donald Trump. And that's just sick.
Well, it is sick. This is all, again, is where we started, pathological.
Yeah.
This is a pathological character. And I think he he woke up one morning and was a little angry and decided, I'm going to break something. And why not break the White House? Yeah, I know I promised I wouldn't, but now I am. Now I'm going to do it. And he's doing the same thing with the country.
Yeah.
Trump doesn't care about America. Donald Trump's probably angry at America. America hasn't given Donald everything Donald wants and Donald feels he deserves. So he's going to punish America for that. He's only got one way.
Right. No, he's the axis from which the world turns. And stunningly, having been elected twice, being a billionaire, and now making more money than he could ever have dreamt of with his crypto scams and grift, but also escaping all the prosecutions that existed on Inauguration Day. Like, why is he so fucking angry?
Well, because he's pathological. Yeah. Because he's an person. We didn't even touch on the Binance guy, that he pardoned, and then gave the interview saying he didn't know who the guy was.
Yeah. After he has criticized Biden for how many weeks now about the auto pen pardons?
Plus, you have him investigated for the auto pen pardons.
But that proves your point of what you said before, which is something I've said for the longest time, that he only thinks 5 seconds in front of him. So in that moment, he wasn't thinking like, oh, shit, I can't say I don't know the guy because I've been saying that Joe Biden's done the auto. To get out of that moment, he was like, I don't know the guy. And that's his standard answer to a lot of things. Like, I don't know him. I don't know about that person.
Yeah, if something happens that's negative and he seems to be, I don't know anything about it. I don't know.
Right. And you and I and other people are like, what the fuck? You just pardoned a scammer and you don't know who he is? I mean, it is
a scammer who just improved your lot by $2 billion. That kind of a scammer. A guy who's a threat to national security is laundering money for Al Qaeda. You pardoned him.
Right.
Good, Donald.
Last thing I want to ask you about, I think in the last week, a federal judge who your dad appointed, Mark L. Wolf, he resigned after 40 years on the bench so he could take a public stand against Trump's abuse of the law and his autocratic overreach. And he's warned of Trump's existential threat to democracy, which is pretty astounding. What do you make of that?
Well, he's absolutely right, and other judges have said so, and Michael Ludig and a few other people have also said this. And this is a come to Jesus sort of moment for the courts and our constitutional government here. And we see what's going on with the Supreme Court, where you've got 3 liberals who are willing to read the Constitution. Some people that are kind of Amy Coney Barrett seems to go either way. But then you've got people like Alito and Thomas who are just totally, they're hacks. Mm-hmm. They're conservatives. This has been their aim forever. And they're this close now. They can smell it. Ask yourself all the power that they're now branding this president. Mm-hmm. Ask yourself, well, what do they think's going to happen when a Democrat's in the Oval Office and it has all this power? Well, that's the thing. Some of these people don't think a Democrat's ever going to be back in the Oval Office. Right. And they'll see to that never happens again. The election is going to be militarized. He will do anything. It's existential at this point for him, even the midterms. And you're going to see rampant. You're already seeing the gerrymandering, of course, and other things. But he's going to try and cheat his way through the next 2 elections.
It's interesting. They call me Optimistic Andy around here, and I'm feeling a little bit more empowered lately than not. So I'm holding true to my optimism. But if we just look at things in the last few weeks, it really is hard to sit back and go, we don't have a democracy anymore. We have a president who's challenging that democracy. I agree with you that he's going to continue to, and maybe even amp up his attempts. But we see a resistance movement that is a resurgence. We see people across all political spectrums that are not accepting of his autocratic overreach. We see the system working. The electoral system is working. We see his popularity in the toilet. He's lost a good chunk of his own base. This Epstein scandal is an existential threat. And we look at the margins of the victories last week. It wasn't just that Democrats won. Like Spanberger won by 15 points. Mikey Sherrill won by 13 points. It is giving people room for hope that we're America for a fucking reason, because for 250 years, we've beat down everything that's come our way. And Donald Trump is not going to win. We are going to win. Democracy is going to win. Am I crazy?
Well, no, I don't think you're crazy. I think two things can be happening at the same time. One is the people are saying, hey, well, I didn't sign on for this. Mm-hmm. He's going to try and cheat and militarize the election. And if he has the help of the Republican Party and still in power and the Supreme Court, this is going to be a very ugly fight. Yes, people will fight. You and I will fight. But it's going to get ugly. It's going to get really ugly. Mm-hmm. He's trying to cheat opponents, for God's sake. I mean, he wants to throw people in prison for being opposed to him. This is...
Well, it's really important what you just said. And also I wanted to comment on the thing you said about the Supreme Court, because right now those are two things that are really litmus tests that are truly going to test where we might be in 6 months. The court is weighing their decision on the tariffs. The language is very clear in the Constitution. He does not have the ability to tax. Tariff is a tax. We saw the court kind of leaning towards ruling against him. It'll be interesting in a few weeks or less to see what they rule. But I think if they give him that power, optimistic Andy might not be so optimistic anymore.
Not so.
No, and
they may vote against him on that one.
Yeah. And then the other test is, will these cases against James Comey and Tish James get thrown out? Because they're so chaotic and they're inept and they don't know what they're doing. And Lindsay Halligan is not legally appointed, blah, blah, blah. If those two things go the right way, which it kind of looks like they might, then that's just more reason why, like, he's trying, but he's just too inept to succeed.
The aura of invincibility is very important to him. Once you realize, hey, this guy can lose,
right?
Then he starts to lose, and you start beating him. He's, I always say it. I'll just close with this. He's the bully in the schoolyard. Okay, Democrats too often are the nerdy little kid with the glasses who just wants to. Okay, you can have my lunch money. Just don't hit me. That can't be. The bully in the schoolyard has to be dealt with one way: punch in the nose.
Yeah, and when one kid comes along and punches in the nose, then all of a sudden everybody piles on, and that may be happening. That may be happening.
The bullying stops at that point.
Yeah. Great chat, Ron. Thanks for coming on, and do come back again.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Andy.
Take care. This episode was produced and edited by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-produced by Matty Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud for Radio Free Rhiniecliff, with additional editing by Matty Rosenberg, music by Andrew Hollander, and graphic design by Cricket Lengyel. And with a special thanks to our sponsor, The Epicurean. Again, thanks for listening. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Backroom with Andy Ostroy YouTube channel, where you can watch full videos of our interviews. See you next time.